Sumy is recovering after the strikes. The night before, the city was attacked twice in the evening by Russian drones. One of the drones crashed into a multi-story building at the lower floors, sparking a fire. 17 residents were injured, including a 14-year-old teenager. He received medical assistance at the scene. Most of the victims are elderly people who were unable to leave their smoke-filled and blocked apartments on their own. The evacuation and rescue operation continued under the threat of repeated strikes. Smashed cars that were parked in the courtyard of the apartment building shattered windows and destroyed walls. Eyewitnesses filmed how, during the previous raid, one of the drones hit the roof of the apartment building. The strike destroyed the roof and a slab. The ceiling collapsed onto the bed. The owner was not at home in the room, and that saved her life. One victim sought medical attention. The woman had an acute stress reaction. The windows in the building were shattered and the balconies were damaged. Residents were offered accommodation in a dormitory for the night. So what is the condition of the wounded, and all the details of this attack will we learn from the TSN correspondent, Oksana Solodovnik. She is with us now live from Sumy. Congratulations, Oksana. So tell me, where are you now? How did the city survive the evening attack? And what is the condition of the victims?
Hello, Solomia. The enemy attacked this apartment building at around 11 p.m. That is, at a time when all the residents were at home. That's why there are the most victims right here. There are as many as 17. But fortunately, people have only minor injuries, mostly from glass cuts. The enemy drone flew directly into an apartment on the first floor. And right after the explosion, a strong fire broke out here. And in the first minutes after the explosion, rescuers were already working here. They were extinguishing the fire and at the same time providing assistance to the victims, helping to evacuate people from smoke-filled entrances and rooms. On the third floor, there was a woman who, due to her health condition, could not move on her own, so the rescuers helped her. Well, they evacuated her, handed her over to the medics, and now this woman is in the hospital. The rest of the people, the rest of the injured, are being treated as outpatients. The fifth entrance of this building suffered the most. An apartment here was completely destroyed. Everything inside was burned out. Apartments on the upper floors were also on fire. Amazingly, in this very apartment, in this destroyed apartment, there was an elderly man, and he wasn't even injured.
Members of the community who are in their later years of life and are considered elderly. It is honestly pretty incredible, man, especially when you think about how bad it was. Yet he somehow walked away from that whole situation without a single injury.
I spoke with the owner of an apartment in the neighboring entrance. Mr. Mikhailo said that at the very moment of the explosion, at the moment of the attack, he and his family were sitting at the table across from the windows. After the explosion, not a single window in the apartment remained intact. Everything was covered in shards, but his family survived. Mr. Mikhailo says that it was after this incident that he began to believe in miracles, the power of Easter. And he said that it was what saved his family.
As I said, I'm not a very religious person, but maybe it's time to start believing. We had just set out the Easter cakes, the dyed eggs, and maybe that's what saved us. Above my eyebrow, it grazed my ear a bit, but I already cleaned it up there and on my forehead. And that's it. I didn't even seek any help.
Today, people are cleaning their homes from glass and these fragments. And here, a relief center has already been set up. Residents are being given the necessary materials for urgent repairs. Volunteers are helping, utility workers are helping, they're covering up the windows. Everyone is providing assistance.
We worked yesterday evening. About 200 windows were damaged and 73 balcony frames. We're working providing emergency housing repairs. That's OSB, tarpaulin, and transparent film. Our psychologists are also working.
In fact, this is not the only apartment building that was damaged during last night's drone attack. Another drone crashed into the roof of another 5-story building. The impact destroyed the floor slab and it collapsed, breaking through the apartment. Fortunately, the owner of this apartment, she had just left before the attack. She was out on her own business and that saved her life. The only thing is, there was one elderly woman who needed help. She had an acute It was a stress reaction, but she did not require hospitalization. Taking everything into account during this drone raid, a total of 12 separate apartment buildings in the city sustained significant structural damage, as well as one private house. A local kindergarten was also heavily impacted by the debris, and in total, more than 500 windows were shattered. And at the sites of the strikes, restoration work is currently underway. Solomia.
Thank you, Oksana. Take care of yourself. TCH correspondent? Oksana Solodovnik was live with us just now and told us from Sumy about the evening attack on the city, and in particular about the condition of both the buildings and those affected. Did you see? Did you see how a Shahed drone hit the vocational school, and then people tried to put out the fire with their bare hands? In Dnipro, 2 wounded teachers from Vasilkivka are being rescued. An enemy drone flew into a classroom of the academic building. The director and a teacher were buried under the shattered walls. But despite this, they tried to save the building they had been developing for 30 years. They told TCH correspondent Olha Pavlovska about what they went through. Everyone has burns and shrapnel wounds. 2 teachers from the vocational school are now in intensive care in Dnipro, side by side.
There was a sound instantly. I turned around and saw black wings, ashes. And immediately the radiators burst. Everything was flying, hissing, everything was burning. When I opened my eyes, there was only blackness and fire.
It was the middle of the workday. The 2 of them were just talking. The Shahed struck just a few meters away from them in the neighboring office.
The main entrance is here, and these are the doors to the building itself. These 3 windows belong to the director's office. The drone hit the reception office. Fortunately, there was no one there, but shrapnel and pieces of the wall fell down. This is the partition between the offices. It collapsed.
They were putting out the fire with their bare hands until they realized blood was pouring everywhere. The director of the school tries to console himself. There were neither students nor other teachers in the academic building at the time of the attack.
A huge pillar of fire. I remember that nothing was visible. Somehow we tried to get out through the door, but it was blocked from the other side. The 2 of us somehow managed to push it aside and jumped out through the flames. We even started putting out the fire out of fear, although unfortunately the destruction there was already critical.
Mr. Alexander has been heading the Vasilkiv Vocational School for exactly 30 years. The academic building was built back in the wartime year of 1944. We set it up with all our might. More than 400 students study here. They want to become tractor drivers, beekeepers, veterinarians, or cooks. My wife says we should leave Vasilkivka. We didn't even allow ourselves to think about it.
For him, the school is like a third son, like his own child.
Now the academic building is in ruins, and most importantly, as the doctors say, is the condition of both wounded teachers. They managed to stabilize them.
Shrapnel wounds and burns are the main concerns now. Today we are trying to make up for it. They were 100% lucky.
The students' education will not be interrupted, the principal assures. The equipment was moved to safe locations in advance. Lectures will be held online and practical classes will be moved to other locations. So now they are trying to recover as quickly as possible.
We'll patch things up here a bit and keep working. The educational institution, no matter what, will keep working. It has worked, is working, and will continue to work. And our children will continue to acquire professions.
So right there together in the intensive care unit, they're already discussing the plan for the new admissions campaign. Olha Pavlovska, Alexander Kulish, Dnipro, TSN, OnePlus, Marathon, United News. Key highways in Donbas are being covered with anti-drone nets. And all this is to protect people and logistics from Russian FPV drones. This was stated by Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov. He says the work is ongoing without interruption, and about a kilometer of roads is being equipped each day. And the designated sections are expected to be completed by the end of the month. In total, since the beginning of the year, 371 kilometers of these protective structures have already been installed in 7 regions. Specifically, these are in the Kyiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson regions. Meanwhile, the occupiers are trying not only to destroy frontline logistics to weaken our military, but also to seize as much territory as possible. The hottest sectors in particular remain the Pokrovsk, Kostiantynivka, Huliaipol, as well as the northern and southern Slobozhansky directions. In total, the General Staff recorded 173 combat engagements over the past day. American and Iranian delegations have arrived in Pakistan. Peace talks are scheduled to take place there today. The United States is represented by Vice President Jay Duvins. The delegation also includes the president's special envoy, Steve Bitkov, and Jared Kushner. The Iranian side did not disclose the participants until the last moment. However, it is now known that the delegation is headed by the Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, and the Minister of Legislative Affairs, Abbas Araghchi. This was reported by Sky News. On the eve of the negotiations, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament named two conditions for concluding a peace agreement: a ceasefire and the unfreezing of Iranian assets. Meanwhile, Donald Trump stated that Iran has no trump cards at the negotiating table. He also noted that preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons constitutes 99% of success. However, in an interview with the New York Post, he threatened new strikes against Iran if the negotiations do not yield results. The negotiations in Islamabad were scheduled for the final hours of Trump's deadline on the night before Wednesday. The President of the United States threatened to destroy civilization in Iran if Tehran continues to block the Hormuz Strait. Hungary is on the eve of historic elections, with just one day left before voting. The polling stations will open already on Sunday at 6 a.m. According to a poll conducted this week by the Institute, Publicus, the opposition party TISA led by Péter Magyar, is polling at 52% and is ahead of Viktor Orbán's political force. Orbán's party has 39%. These are voters who have already decided on a candidate. But nearly a quarter of those eligible to vote tomorrow are still undecided, and this could ultimately affect the outcome. There is no day of silence before Election Day in Hungary, so on Saturday, Péter Magyar has scheduled as many as 5 campaign rallies. Viktor Orbán will hold just one, but a large one in Budapest. On the eve of the election, pro-government Hungarian TV channels aired an address by Prime Minister Orbán, in which he reminded voters of his achievements over 16 years in power. In particular, that he prevented war, even despite Brussels' wishes. He is convinced that his party will win, but the opposition will not accept these results and will challenge them.
Our opponents will stop at nothing to seize power. They conspire with foreign intelligence services, threaten our supporters with violence, and claim election fraud, inventing accusations even before the elections. They organize demonstrations and chaos even before your votes are counted.
The European Union is abolishing passport stamps and foreign passports. Starting today, a new entry and exit procedure is fully operational at the external borders of 29 European countries. There will be no changes at Ukrainian checkpoints. However, most citizens of our country will experience the new border crossing procedure during their very first trip to EU and Schengen countries. Instead of stamping passport pages, border guards will create a digital file where they will enter data from the passport, a facial photograph, and fingerprint scans. The State Border Guard Service of Ukraine warns that it is precisely the first border crossing that will be significant for Ukrainians. It may take a little longer than before, but during subsequent trips, the procedure will be faster because the system will already have previous records and will only compare the new data with those already in the database.
This will not have a particularly significant impact on the speed of processing or noticeably extend the total amount of time it takes for citizens to cross the border. But of course, you should make sure that you are fully prepared for this, especially if someone is in a great hurry. Considering that queues can increase at different times during different periods, especially on weekends or holidays, it is better, of course, to allow for more time to cross the border.
Almost 10 million Ukrainians have already received 1,500 hryvnias in additional social assistance, Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko reported. In Ukraine, targeted payments have been ongoing since April 1st. 1,500 hryvnias are provided for vulnerable categories such as pensioners, people with disabilities, low-income families, large families, and single mothers. The pension fund pays the money either to bank accounts or through Ukrposhta. Payments for another 1.6 million recipients of social assistance will be funded by the end of the week. For all recipients, the payments will be made by the end of April, the head of the government clarified. In total, 13 million people will receive assistance. No additional applications or requests are needed. The payments will be credited automatically. 1 kilometer per day. At this pace, anti-drone defenses are being constructed in 2 strategically important directions in the Donetsk region. Defense Minister Mikhail Fedorov reported that 25 kilometers of protective structures need to be constructed on these logistically important sections. From FPV drones, so it should be done by the end of the month. In total, since the beginning of the year, more than 370 kilometers of anti-drone nets have already been installed in the frontline areas of 7 regions to ensure the safety of people.